Kona Hotako speaking on October 17th. I know I haven't uploaded videos on this topic recently, but that's because I published a video about the latest novel chapter. I thought it would only be 8 minutes long, but it ended up being almost triple that. I was also testing out some design changes for the shorts, and that slowed me down even more. But we need to speed things up, and I can assure you that you're going to hear facts you've never heard before. I think I have enough videos uploaded on my channel by now to guarantee that. So, welcome to Cut Content from ReZero's first season, episode number 5. Since I know you don't even remember what you ate yesterday, I'll tell you what this chapter covers. This episode begins from the moment Subaru wakes up after dying for the first time in the mansion, up to his second death where he is killed in the building's hallway. The first sequence, from Subaru running to his chat with Beatrice, was almost entirely well adapted. They left one or two things out, like Subaru remembering his parents, but as I said before, since his parents don't appear in the first season, they simply omitted any mention of them. Although, an interesting detail that we can only infer but not directly see is one of the reasons why Subaru runs away from the sisters. It is said that even though he had already experienced this feeling of being forgotten by Amelia and Felt, at that moment it didn't matter as much because he didn't know them. But Rem and Ram are different. They are people he lived with for a few days before they forgot their memories of him, and that's why he can't classify the situation in the same way. As he realized they detected how confused and terrified he was by this, the sisters didn't know what to say, and neither did he, until it reached a point where he couldn't stand the silence and the atmosphere anymore. So he ran off. To be honest, I thought I already knew everything about Arc 2, but rereading this part of the story made me realize that, in reality, I still don't fully know the circumstances of the Subaru from this part. Then he gets to Biko, and everything is adapted normally. You know, Subaru talking with her and confirming that she is the only one who hasn't forgotten him because his save point is right after his first encounter with the librarian at dawn. The truth is, the anime did something that surprised me in a good way. Some of the things they omitted in episode 4 were added here. For example, the subplot of Rem wanting to kill Subaru but camouflaging her intentions by saying she was just bothered by his hair. I had previously mentioned this as cut content, but here in the anime, they decided to put it in during the protagonist's second loop. I think I have an explanation for this. You see, you must remember that in the second loop, the protagonist set a goal to redo everything he did in the first loop in order to get the same previous result. But upon trying to replicate everything, he realized he couldn't do it. For some reason, things didn't unfold in the same way. It's not that the events changed radically, but there were unexpected variables that ended up making Subaru feel overwhelmed by not being able to replicate the exact circumstances of the first loop. The anime makes use of these subtle differences to add a subplot in this loop that did, in fact, happen just off-screen. I'm talking about the subplot of Rem wanting to cut the protagonist's hair. Of course, the circumstances are different now, but the situation ends up happening. I was honestly surprised by this, as I had already considered that part to be eliminated. But it seems the anime waited for the second loop to add it under the pretext that it's a variable that wasn't shown. Another cool scene, though it's understandable why it was omitted, is a part of the shower sequence. In it, they were supposed to explain how the gasless stove or the hot water works in this world, which was technologically on the verge of the Industrial Revolution, but they didn't. In the novel, there's a brief lesson given by Roswal, who says that the hot water baths and the pots have a firestone that reacts to the mana of living beings. And in that way, they perform modern functions despite living in a previous era. It also expands a bit on the magical elements of the world and Subaru's aptitude for it. I would explain a bit more, but I have faint memories of this subplot being explained later on, so let's move on. Something really interesting that happens here and that I highly doubt anyone would notice are the words Roswal uses when evaluating Subaru's magical potential. He specifically says the words, "Mion, mion, mion." You see, this is a secret that was revealed 4 years ago with the Blu-ray of the second season. That Blu-ray came with a copy of the Greed IF light novel version. Among the many revelations in that novel, the Subaru from that version asks Echidna about who or what Mion 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 is. She only says that if she had to put it in simple terms, Mion 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 is her master. But not a master in the sense you probably think, but rather her master in the sense that she was a mage who unified the first theories of magic for everyone. Therefore, all mages after her are, so to speak, her students, including Echidna. The most curious thing is that the author has plans for her. He plans to include her in an eventual story that will take place 400 years before episode 1. But getting back on topic, Subaru then comes out of the bathroom naked and runs into Ram. who makes fun of the size of his male reproductive organ. Although an addition that was unfortunately cut was the part from the novel where, in that same moment, Ram picks up Subaru's underwear and throws it in the trash can while the protagonist's complaints are heard. But another scene just as interesting as the Mayan Mayan one is when Ram teaches Subaru the local language. In the novel, it's made clear that even though the protagonist is not from this world, he can still communicate using verbal language with the people here. But it confirms that, despite this, he cannot understand the local writing. That's why it becomes necessary for Ram to give him lessons every night. But something curious that will happen later is that in a side story that takes place only days after this night, it is revealed how Subaru and Ram make a bet. In that bet, Subaru writes a text in Japanese for Ram. And surprisingly, she manages to translate the text instantly with Subaru's teaching guidelines. At the same time, she thinks that she feels like she has seen those characters of Subaru's language somewhere before. That is, she feels like she has seen those Japanese letters somewhere else, although she doesn't remember where. Curiously, Ram wouldn't be the only one to point this out. In the future, in another novel, Garfield does it too, but I'll talk about that in another video. Anyway, his class would then end, and with it, the day. The following day would be the night where Subaru would be attacked by something that kills him in his sleep. We don't see anything that happens that day, but we do see that he ends up going to the village with Rem to buy groceries. The novel and the anime cover the chat they both had on the way back, but they don't cover it completely. Apart from the first time Rem genuinely laughed at Subaru, there was something that would have been a great detail if it had been animated. You see, in the novel, there comes a moment in this walk where Rem offers to heal Subaru's wounds, but he refuses because he says he prefers to treasure them as a memory of his effort that day. Although, internally, he told himself that he was grateful for the dog bite because it would serve as a reference point the next day. He thinks that if he wakes up and still sees that scar, it would mean he had survived the night. He was so determined about this that he said if he hadn't been bitten by the dog, he surely would have ended up cutting himself just to have some point of reference. This is a sign of how his mind was already beginning to show signs of deterioration, because I don't think self-harming for something like this is healthy under any circumstances. The matter was going to be delved into further, but since Subaru got distracted by Rem's smile, well, the topic had to be changed. Finally, in his study session with Amelia, Subaru manages to convince her to have a date with him, although he learns something unexpected that the anime didn't include. He found out that Rem and Ram had discovered that he was purposely not giving his all in his duties as a butler. This is important because the sisters noticing this meant they were alert to him and his effort to hide certain things from others. This reinforced the possible belief that Subaru was a spy with bad intentions in the mansion. Obviously, we know Subaru is not one, and it's not that Subaru wanted to slack off from work, but rather, since the protagonist was trying to emulate the first loop. Well, he tried to repeat the effort he used the first time, but for this, he had to pretend he didn't know things that had already been explained to him, and this was detected by the sisters. Anyway, hours later, Subaru would start to feel sick and would meet his end in the hallway. Honestly, I think I've already commented on the most interesting of these changes, so let's go to the author's tweets. Another video, another occasion where I have to stalk the author and look at the tweets he posted 9 years ago, just for your enjoyment. First, the author revealed something I already suspected but only recently confirmed. When Subaru says goodbye to Beatrice after waking up from his death, he doesn't return to his room's hallway but is sent right to where Amelia is. Later on, we would find out that it's Betty who decides where Subaru appears, but since at this point we don't have this context, well, it's a detail that's easy to overlook on your first time through. The detail of Betty's kindness. Second, apparently the bathroom scene was highly anticipated by the fans of that year. It was so anticipated that when I was checking the tweets from that day, I saw several tweets making reference to it. Anyway, I wasn't around in 2016, so I couldn't tell you the exact reason for this popularity. Third, if you follow my videos, you'll know that I've commented that the author doesn't usually think much about the characters' outfits. In fact, I think I remember that he himself once admitted that he had forgotten what outfits his creations were wearing at some point in the story. If that memory is true, that would explain this tweet where the author confesses that he regrets not having described more outfits for the other women of the mansion. Fourth, I suppose you must already know about Teppei's fanaticism for Amelia. Well, a tweet he wrote with great care was one praising the protagonist's pajamas. Don't ask me why I added this here because I don't know either. Fifth, as I said throughout this video, The anime staff purposely omitted subplots from the last episode because they expected to adapt them in this loop, maintaining, as I said, the idea that all the events of the novel happened, just with certain variations and off-screen. This idea is supported by the author saying that it's an approach that was decided upon when producing the anime. Sixth, the author imagines that when Emilia pronounces the word date in English, she would pronounce it in a way that's different from the conventional one. Again, don't ask me why I added this, but let's move on to the final section. As always, go watch this episode's break time. It's a really good one, and while it's not faithful to the novel, it takes the liberty of adding things that aren't in it, and I personally consider them canon. For example, it gives us a hint about Roswell's real age, or how it's said that Subaru came to bathe in that place because he thought Emilia had been there before. It's not that he wants to see her naked, but he wanted to bathe in the same water as her. Although now that I think about it, I don't know if this sounds better or worse. It's also revealed that Subaru and Roswell had a guy talk, a chat where they talked about appearance or youth. Unfortunately, Ram was already outside and would overhear Subaru's lines about the Emilia water. That's why it's understandable that later when he comes out, Ram insults him and throws his underwear in the trash can. Anyway, this sequence lasts 2.5 minutes, but I assure you that you'll be thinking about these dialogues for longer than that. And that has been all for the recap of episode 5. I'm sorry if I've been delayed, but as I've said, some things came up with the channel and I had to supervise them. Besides, I've had to travel again. I don't usually talk about it, but I have certain family matters which require that, from time to time, once a week, I take the whole day to sort them out. Add that to the fact that I put out an additional video for everyone and, well, you'll understand why I've been busy. I usually explain this on my streams in Spanish, but since I don't do streams in English, I'm taking the opportunity to announce it here for my audience on that side of the world. Remember that every like and comment helps to boost the views on YouTube and can be the difference between a successful video and one with little reach, so I would greatly appreciate it if you would take that trouble. But tell me, what did you think of the cut content from this episode?